Today, we are going to tackle a stereotype that is, let's be honest, pretty much everywhere. We're going to take a whole new look at the teenage brain, not as some problem that needs to be fixed, but as this incredible, crucial, and yeah, often really misunderstood phase of our lives. You've heard this joke, right? I mean, maybe you've even said it. It's a classic knee-jerk reaction anytime someone brings up the topic of the adolescent brain. But it actually points to something much bigger, a sort of cultural habit we have.
And it's a really good question. I mean, think about it. We don't really go around making fun of toddlers for tripping over their own feet, but for some reason, teenagers are totally fair game. The risk-taking, the drama, the mood swings, we treat it all like it's some kind of personal failing. But what if it's not a flaw at all? What if all that stuff is actually a predictable, even necessary part of a massive upgrade happening in the brain? That's the big idea we're digging into today. These aren't bugs in the system, they are quite literally essential features. So here's our game plan. We'll start by talking about why this is more than a joke. Then we'll pin down what adolescence really is. And after that, we're going to hit you with 3 huge lines of proof, looking across different cultures, different species, and even way back in history. All right, so let's get serious about adolescence for a minute. This isn't just some awkward phase to get through. This is the period where our brains are literally wiring themselves up for adulthood. It's the foundation for who we're going to become. So what even is adolescence? Most of us just think of it as the teenage years, right? Like from 13 to 19. But it turns out the real scientific definition is way broader and, frankly, a lot more interesting. Okay, so check this out. It starts with a clear biological signal, puberty. But the endpoint, that's all about society. It ends when you find your footing as a stable, independent person. It's a mix of biology and sociology. And this really shows the gap between what we think and what's really going on. The common view is just a simple age bracket, but scientifically, it's a much longer runway. It kicks off around 11 or 12, and these days it can easily stretch into our mid-20s because, things like college and getting financially stable just take longer now. Now, that longer timeline makes a lot of people wonder, okay, is this whole adolescence thing just something we made up recently? A modern Western fad? Well, the evidence says absolutely not. And here's our first big piece of proof. Let's look across cultures. If this was just some modern invention, you wouldn't see the same patterns popping up all over the world. But guess what? We do. So there was this massive study that looked at over 5,000 young people across 11 totally different countries. We're talking places like China, Colombia, Kenya, Sweden, the Philippines, all over the map. And they measured 2 really key things, sensation-seeking and self-control. And the results were just, wow, so incredibly consistent. As you can see right here, that drive for new, exciting, risky stuff, sensation-seeking, it spikes right around age 19 and then starts to drop off. Meanwhile, self-control, our ability to hit the brakes, just keeps climbing steadily all the way into the mid-20s. That gap, that mismatch, that's the signature of the adolescent brain, and it doesn't matter where on Earth you live. Okay, so it's a human universal. Pretty cool. But the evidence goes even deeper than that. Our second piece of proof shows this whole developmental stage, well, it isn't even unique to us. That's right. All mammals go through a version of adolescence. And scientists have found that teenage mice and rats, they take more risks, they're way more likely to explore new places. And get this, they drink more alcohol, but specifically when they're hanging out with their peers. Sound at all familiar? And for a perfect and kind of hilarious real-world example, just listen to this Australian wildlife expert talking about wombats. He basically says they go from being super cute and cuddly to just hating everything and being total jerks. It's a funny way to put it, but it's such a powerful reminder that this is a deep biological shift. So we've got across cultures, across species, and our third and final proof takes us across time, because it turns out complaining about teenagers is not a new thing. It's a very, very old tradition. Check this out. This is from Socrates around 400 BC. Contempt for authority, disrespect for elders, love chatter. I mean, come on, that could have been a tweet from last week. And it didn't stop there. About 100 years later, you have Aristotle describing young people as fickle, passionate, and impulsive. For over 2,000 years, grown-ups have been observing the exact same behaviors. So let's just put it all together. You have the same patterns showing up across totally different cultures, across different species, and across thousands of years of human history.
The conclusion is pretty hard to escape. This is not some new invention. And that brings us to the most important point of all. Adolescence isn't a mistake. It's not a disease. It is a fundamental, biological, and totally necessary stage of growing up. It's the process the brain uses to get us ready to leave the nest and make it on our own. It's literally how we become us. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. Knowing all this, that it's predictable, that it's purposeful, that it's universal, how does that change how we see the teenagers in our own lives? Maybe it shifts us from being frustrated to being a little more fascinated.